Wakanda Forever, Black Panther 2, I believe the 30th MCU film. Wow. Whew, crikey. There is so much to say about this, but then also at times there was very little happening. It's almost like a contradictory viewing experience. I think the only place to start, a very quick question to everybody, and I'll say, I was wiping my cheeks and holding my nose for the whole of the first opening scene, 10-15 minutes. And I was right at the front of the cinema, so I couldn't even see if anybody else was losing their shit. But I just thought when your eyes get a little bit wet, but then I touched my cheek and it was running down. And then I felt like, when your chest sort of contracts a little bit and you think, oh, it's coming. And so I had to start pinching my nose so I wasn't making noises. Now, I felt to myself, like, before I watched this, I thought, I'll be cool. It's fine. Like, yeah, actor, great person, very tragic, but it is an actor. I don't know him. Wow, wowie, woo-wah, wow. That, if you ever have to be in the unfortunate position of this very specific situation, like terrible situation, that's how you do it.
I felt legitimately like I was going to a funeral.
Yeah.
And it was very moving. And not only was it a funeral, it was the kind of funeral that I was taught to treasure, in that it was a homegoing celebration. I remember my elders telling me when I was younger and first had to deal with things like this, that we should really be joyful at the exits and crying at the comings in of life. Yeah. And that was so well reflected in what was there. But at the same time, I was just shattered to be reliving it all.
Yeah, man. I sat there just, motionless when the MCU titles rolled, in complete silence. Jesus, the whole purple hue,
it was beautiful.
Boseman's smile, his swag, his embodiment of, this fictional Black king, and it's gone. And you just felt that weight, and it was just like, oh God, I'm doing it to myself now.
I was thinking it listening to you, man.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus.
Can I ask a question? It wasn't perfectly silent, but it almost had, that death rattle, that slow-moving wind at the end of Infinity War, when everybody was being dusted and it was completely silent.
Yeah, there was something.
It was like
the current.
Oh, dude, I'm getting tingles. Honestly.
Like I've got both hands now.
I thought that the funeral scene, the first 10 minutes, was very there's just so many ways to screw that up, and it was very tastefully done. And I'm with Bryan. The point at which I was truly moved was with the title card, the flipping of the Marvel thing, because there's a way to distance yourself from that, because you're like, you can always just say, well, the character's dead, but they break the fourth wall in a sense. You're looking at the Marvel title card. That's really about the person,
right?
Chadwick Boseman, as opposed to like the character of T'Challa. And that to me was I thought quite moving. I just thought they did a nice job with that overall. So yeah.
To place the audience in a way that you don't feel voyeuristic, that it's not uncomfortable for you watching this group of people that have lived through it all. I felt I'd been invited into it, and not invited into their grief. Like I was a part of it as somebody that's been stuck around these films for a long while, and they were saying, it's okay, you can feel this with us.
Yeah, I think it really opens up that whole first section. Just building on what you said, Matt, I think it opens up what I think is the strongest part of the movie, because it doesn't so much center Chadwick Boseman's death or T'Challa's death so much as it centers the grief of the women who remain, setting aside all the set pieces they have to have and all the chess pieces they have to move to get things into place for the next movie. But the strongest parts of the movie are where it centers their grief. And that's where I think like the first hour of the movie, I thought was just great for that reason.
Been a lot of talk about Angela Bassett being Oscar nominated. I think for me, without jumping too far forward, a lot of her big moments I'd already seen in the trailers, which was disappointing. But Letitia Wright, whatever anybody may or may not think of her, she's got to be nominated for that. That was just outstanding. What a performance.
Yes,
did we all cry? It's not like competitive crying, but I need to feel better. I need somebody else to tell me that they were crying. I need it. Lie to me, Tim.
No, I did not, but I understand how one could.
Fucking puffed her. Real men cry in public. Real men can be weak.
That's right.
Sorry, I set you up for that a little bit, didn't I? So, okay. So general feeling, it was good. And I think it's okay for something to be good. This is the third. Oh, I thought you all froze then. I panicked. I think this
we're listening intently.
I feel like this is in the same category as maybe, and I'm not saying in a qualitative way, but in the way that the films have been structured in Eternals, Shang-Chi, whereby felt the length of it. I did snooze a little bit and I did have to go for 2p breaks as well. But
wow.
It's a film that has constructive problems and it's far from perfect, but I do think there's enough in this for it to be, it's a good film. I really wanted something like Return of the King. I felt like this was going to be the bookend of Phase 4, fantasy warfare from the midpoint to the end. An end game or an Infinity War final act. It left me a little bit deflated.
The lead character has gone, which is the story is built around. What can we do now to honor the fact that we appreciated his contribution and still keep the spirit, the weight of what this character represents?
So much,
socio-politically, culturally, pop art. How do we honor that and continue the narrative without disrespecting it, without pandering? Just so much at stake here. Then, whilst we're doing that, tie in the MCU as well. Every film in this phase, I think, has been like a project. Eternals, great superpowered gods, but actually, they don't really exist and they can get switched off like that. What do you do? Shang-Chi, the culture with a pantheon of people we know nothing about. How do we slide them into the narrative? Done. Doctor Strange, bookend. Spider-Man, bookend.
Yeah.
It's funny. My first thing was like, oh my God, it's Empire Strikes Back of Black Panther. Like, you know, the deaths. Yeah. And that's why the best parts of the film were the character arcs. Angela, yes, the power, the weight of her performance was phenomenal. But Letitia had that journey of the rage and the hatred, and then bringing it all back round. It's a strong film. You can kind of watch it as standalone. Just watch Black Panther 1 and watch this, and they just fit. You don't have to know anything about the Winter Soldier. You don't have to know anything about Thanos per se. It's just its own story.
As the MCU expands and you're having more debuts in particular characters, whereas before each phase we had like a rotation of we've got these 4 and now we've got those 4 plus another 2, and then the next one we've got those 6 and another 2, so you could have one per phase. We're almost at the point now whereby phase 4 is introductions, and then phase 5 is going to be catching up with the guys that we know. With the gap in between the release dates for individual IPs, that you touch on a brilliant point that I hadn't thought about. What Black Panther Wakanda Forever does really well is it carries the character's narrative onwards. And that is only more impressive when you think about the script was ready to go. And then Chadwick Boseman, they had to completely rewrite it. But this was a sequel that felt much more organic to the first one than per se Doctor Strange did.
Yeah. Similar like thematic territory. I mean, the irony is that less has happened in these Black Panther movies for the great world-altering things in the MCU, but the themes that it mines are actually much more important to real life than any of the other movies, in the sense that like these movies are about, you know, colonialism, exploitation, you know, real themes. Like they mine that territory and brought in and deliver that even further than the first one. So I appreciated that.
What this punctuated really well for me was a theme throughout phase 4, because it's the most prominent example of it. Phase 4 starts and ends, and actually there's a through flow. It's about loss. When you start with Wanda at the very beginning, you end with this. Eternals, loss of identity, really. Loss of identity
and
for
the
Eternals.
mother character and all of that.
Exactly right.
Now that you've said it, that's the golden thread.
how did I not say No Way Home? I mean, if anybody lost anything than anybody else, it was like Peter Parker lost everything.
Yeah.
Black Widow.
Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah,
You know, what's her name? Lost her appearance. That's why she's punching through universes.
Yeah.
You know, it's that is You've hit it, man. That is gold right there. When we get into the next phases, we're gonna look back and we're gonna see how that loss ties into that. That was a thematic element. Yeah, that's heavy.
With Shuri, I likened it a lot to where Tony Stark was in Iron Man 3, the post-traumatic stress of what he went through in the Avengers film. And that journey whereby he forced himself into his work, was doing all the suits. It wasn't until there was external pressures put onto him, external conflict, that he was able to reconcile his internal conflicts. And I feel that Shuri had a very similar character path in this film. And also, they basically turned Namor into Blade.
Elaborate.
Pregnant mum gets bit by a vampire. Pregnant mum gets the injection, dies in childbirth, creates a novelty in the genetic
but the mum didn't
process.
Die in childbirth, did she?
Oh, did she not?
No, she didn't.
I'll tell you what,
she lived a long life and she died.
I'll tell you what, Namor had a sexy mum. I'll tell you that much. I'll tell you,
this man needs help.
When they showed a prego, I just looked at the screen and went, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense." Yeah, I can understand that. That's verisimilitude for you. That is visceral. That's visceral filmmaking. Yeah.
I'm cringing hard, audience.
There's the funeral. Now this woman's pregnant. Marvel, I take my hats off to you. That's directing, Ryan. Stand up and applaud in a quiet cinema. Sit down, you idiot.
Yeah. How do we make what everyone thinks are going to be the Atlanteans, and we can't now because Jason Momoa and co have already done that? How do we find a culture, and how do we find a race, and how do we find a story and a believable narrative? They still had a sense of, it's almost Avatar-ish, connected via the sea, and they had this holistic existence, which was really quite clever, which made them powerful in their own right, in the way that they were able to utilize nature as a force.
This small tweak to stop the comparisons with Jason Momoa, especially that they spent minimum time underwater. I think that was probably key. You fill in the gaps, you've got it. You've seen this kind of thing before.
Yeah.
But conversely, when you look at Black Adam, which I haven't seen, however, you go, oh, so what's this? DC's Doctor Strange. Oh, who's this? DC Ant-Man. And oh, who's that? DC's whirlwind woman. To use it as sort of Mesoamerican was absolutely fantastic, like what they called the Talakans. And I was really interested in seeing Atuma as well as one of his generals, because in the comics, he's traditionally an adversary to Namor, who's always trying to overtake his throne. They did a bit of a Doctor Strange 1 with that, didn't they? With Mordo. Mordo basically being the antagonist in that situation. That's where the adversary was.
And the other girl, there's this other general, they were like in his neck. So as powerful as they were, you can see that the level of political conflict has been established.
This is something that I had a really big problem with. The reason why 3D doesn't work very well, I watched this in 2D, by the way. The bulbs are all lowered to save money. When I sit down in a film now and it looks dark, it instantly gets my back up. Now, I thought maybe I was over-egging the pudding on it. Maybe I was a little bit drunk on my own sophistication of identifying. Oh, it would have. They should have had that lamp up a little bit higher. It wasn't of the correct luminous flux. However, having been on YouTube since it's a common problem. I thought that the blue people sometimes just looked like people when they were in the water. Now, I don't know if that was, and maybe that could have been a stylistic decision. And I'm going to choose my words. No, I'm not going to choose my words very carefully. I'm just going to say it. And if you've got a problem with this, that isn't my intention. And the actual issue is with you. This is a film where it has a black cast. A lot of the first act was in the dark, and it was almost impossible to distinguish certain characters. The brightness of this film, the color correction, I think the CQ was off all the way through the film until it got to the very final set piece, whereby it was oversaturated. And for example, the Ironheart outfit looked like it was from 1998 manga.
Yeah, I definitely noticed it too. I guess I automatically went to thinking, like you said, that the CGI needed the help. I guess I didn't think about it quite as hard as you did, but I did notice it, yeah.
To finish off on the Talikans, I think it was a really clever decision to put it in the Yucatan Peninsula, because in real life, that's where the meteor hit that wiped out the dinosaurs. So the fact that we had the second vibranium impact in that region, it's canonically clever. And the other thing from doing a little bit of research, it's canon in the comics that the hatching celestials are held in a chrysalis of vibranium. So again, we have this tie to what possibly was going on in the internal, tying it all together. I also loved when this is just someone that was being clever in the office. He went, have you noticed that Namor is basically French for no love? Namor.
Yeah.
That was fucking, that was chef's kiss, that was. And the opening scenes were quite horror-esque, weren't they? Like with them just popping up in that kind of like sirenistic.
The siren,
the siren song.
Wicked. I was like,
so good.
Wow.
And it also showed in that these guys aren't here for fun. They ain't fucking about. Like,
this is an extinction event. Yeah,
exactly. The only thing, how is Tiamat not been addressed by Namor? Like the dude's poking up the fucking sea off the coast of San Francisco or wherever it is. That's the one thing that bothers me about this phase, that we've had so many world-changing events, but they're never cross-referenced. The celestial poking out of the sea, Namor would have said, look, you want to know why we're fucking angry? Look what you've done to my house.
Yeah.
I've got a sneaky sense that they run concurrent.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah, because there is no way that would not have come up, especially talking about, we didn't spend so much time underwater. I don't think that, when we see the timeline, it could have been Spider-Man was 5 years later. I think this is before 5 years later.
Like like Guardians Volume 2 that just picked up.
Yeah, just kind of like near enough what happened next. So it could be a matter of months. We don't know. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Tim's so still. It worries me. I'll go, shit. We froze him.
Tim's like this.
He's like Drax.
You guys have to keep in mind, I've been up since like 4 a.m.
Poor baby.
Wow. You're a star, Tim.
That's commitment, mate. I love it. Thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate your commitment to Sparkle Motion. On the Everett Ross point of view, this film was, without question, 20 to 30 minutes too long. There was a lot of meandering, and I think we clearly had a Black Panther story that needed to be told, even without Black Panther. And that where that left us was, we didn't need the Everett Ross stuff could have been completely taken out. I also feel, as good as that opening scene was, and it's set where the world was after Wakanda revealing itself, where you had the French and American diplomats at the EU, to me, that proposed a different film. There was going to be a war for resources. The film wasn't referential to that there afterwards. Also, the stuff with Val, they make her a governmental figure that's employed by the state as opposed to a independent bad actor. There were just so many lingering shots that I felt if they had trimmed them all a bit, that maybe we could. It just seemed too long. And it wasn't that it was dragging or anything. Just truth, bladder.
bladder hurting by 3 hours.
Mm.
I was sitting there going, well, we didn't really have to linger on that scene quite that long, did we? Like repeatedly. If the adding up all those little cuts would have made a big difference.
I think the UN scene was important. The Talokan, Wakandan, and human narrative doesn't play out. It doesn't play out because obviously, especially at the end when he's like, you know, the humans will come to them and they will turn to us.
Mhm.
Without that kind of, as you say, antagony implicitly in your face, you've got no real coat to hang and put your coat on.
The only thing that I'm saying with that
Yeah.
is maybe it's t-shirt weather. Maybe we don't need the coat.
Yeah.
I feel like it was an additional contrivance that wasn't potentially necessary. Like that whole the normal people sort of aspects of it.
In terms of what you said, I agree that the Val stuff without and then what? So we've had a pop up, and now you're the director of CIA. Oh, all right, we'll go with that then. Oh, you're his ex-wife. All right, we'll go with that then.
That was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was so strange.
In the comics, it wasn't Everett Ross. She was Nick Fury's ex-wife, and she tried to kill Nick Fury. He killed her. She turns out to be a Skrull. Need I say more? So we see where that kind of is the mini setup. So even though we're
yes,
right now you're feeling the weight of enough said about that.
Well, that's where these movies are the weakest, because they have to set up these global chess pieces, and so sometimes feel shoehorned in. But I mean, it's all in service of the broader plot. Ultron acted like we were talking about earlier about it's like like a Star Wars, like an Empire Strikes Back type of thing. You know, there's no clear conclusion to the story. It seems like a lot of pieces are being moved into place. I could imagine that being true of this one too. I mean, it certainly has those features. I mean, it's very explicit about that. I mean, the last actual scene of the movie is with Namor explaining, you know, what the global pieces are. I mean, I think it's just like pretty clear in that respect.
We spoke a little bit about the performance of Letitia Wright, but what was the actor's name who played Namor?
Oh, I had it.
Tenoch Huerta.
Thank you.
Yeah, he was great. Like he felt menacing. Like he felt.
Oh yeah.
He felt powerful, but not in a physical way.
Yeah, the gravitas was there.
Yeah.
It's almost predictably unpredictable. Everybody's tense because they don't know what he's going to do next, but he is going to do something, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the great thing about his character, this is a guy that's going to do whatever he needs to do to get where he needs to get.
I loved that Killmonger was in this film.
Yeah.
And I had no clues. No clue.
I knew. And the reason what made me think about it, I saw him at the premiere, and I'm like,
oh, okay,
you're not there. You're not there just for photo shoots.
Yeah.
And I think it was really important because of the juxtaposition that you could hold Shuri's journey to in this film. Yeah. And what I also liked was the way that they visually displayed this was through the use of fire. When Killmonger was burning the heart-shaped herb.
Yeah.
When they were in the ancestral plane, she was almost absorbed by fire. Sometimes when you're full of anger and rage, it can come from different places, but it can have the same outcome.
Yeah. She was in the water and then she came out totally dry. I was like, that is wicked. Yeah. Definitely. That was really good. Killmonger was the icing. You know, there were theories out there, Thor, Love and Thunder, there's clearly an afterlife, that there may be a way to bring people back, and so Killmonger might come back. And the outcry would be, well, if you can do that with Killmonger, why can't you do that with
everybody else?
Yeah, everybody else. Yeah. But you know, it's comics. But that's one of the things that I kind of rate the MCU for, is that it's comics, but if you're out, you're out. You're out. You know, you're out at Black Widow, and she's gone.
When you have such a talismanic lead as Chadwick Boseman from the first film, was one concern that maybe this film would have no star power.
I was pleasantly surprised by how they did in their own right. I didn't feel the chasm that I expected to feel.
Yeah.
And I really had low expectations in that regard. So
yes,
I was definitely impressed.
Yeah. They can't put this on Angela Bassett. She's the only one with the
real power.
The real power. But everyone
And
Well,
Baka stepped up like crazy.
Yeah, I never
Denai
thought
Guerrero.
I would be so invested in Okoye's journey.
Yes,
I was like, wow, why am I feeling
that was
like
so
this?
good. Yeah, I got all in my
Powerful,
feelings too.
yeah.
I want to talk about post credits. Nakia and Shuri at the end of the film. When she burnt her funeral attire, I thought that was a great way to end the film. It started and ended in a very personal note. Post credit thing though, oh, goodness me, it's a bit of a knee-jerk course correction. Created his son, who could be any age, called T'Challa, the heir to Black Panther and Wakanda. It just feels a little bit clunky.
Yeah, that to me was possibly the most disappointing part of the entire film. I mean, there are two things. One other thing we haven't talked about, which we can, is Riri Williams. We barely touched on her.
Yeah.
Also very disappointing in my opinion.
Hated
But
it.
to But to
21 seconds.
but to
21 seconds.
but to
21 seconds.
but to answer this question, so the thing I loved most about the movie, like I said in the beginning, is that it centered the women. It's like in most of these movies, other than obviously Wanda and Natasha's movie, either an ensemble cast or a male lead centered. And here we had, all the women centered, and the overarching theme centering their grief over the loss of this person they love.
Yeah.
And rather than just like continue on that, which is like I thought a very refreshing part of the film, reintroduced a new male heir. It's like you just undercut the entire strength of the thematic part of the themes I love best about the movie. So I found that to be very
he was adorable.
Although the kid was cute.
Yeah, I kept thinking, is that his real kid? Or
on that note as well, did you notice the use of elephants throughout the film?
Yes.
They have a matriarchal power lineage. Compare that to there was only female monarchy left. That comparison was really, really clever. And as Tim said, to finish it like that, they just faced the camera and went, not really. It was disappointing.
Totally.
But obviously, Riri Williams, I didn't like the character.
We were talking earlier about like how bloated the movie felt. Now I kind of give this movie a pass because it had to have the bookends of the Chadwick Boseman stuff, so that extended the movie a bit. But I thought, honestly, like she could have been almost entirely eliminated. Like the plot point she serves didn't need to be served by her. And the only point she had was to serve a plot point.
Right.
I just did not. And I found it like.
She was a MacGuffin.
Yeah.
It's like and it was not compelling. I mean, she's introduced just for the sake of introducing her. There's no purpose to it. I just did not feel like all that stuff that's set in Boston was interesting or mattered all that much.
Not at all.
I just felt like every time she was on screen, I don't think it's the actor, and I think it's the character. It's just the way that she was written into the story. I just felt like bored every time she was like, it was a scene centering her.
Now, see, I didn't find her as annoying, but I've seen her in other parts that I can't think of the name of them, but her face was familiar to me, and I liked the actress. So it wasn't so much that I hated what she did. I just didn't, I don't know. It just seemed like you said, another puzzle piece. I'd say, it was ill-fitting.
There's no purpose she served that couldn't have been served more simply using some other just like easier plot device. A character for the sake of plot, which is
Everett Ross could have just have said, I'm not going to give my source away because that's how it works. And then he could have been the person that was in trouble. That costume was whack. It looked awful. The CGI looked awful.
Yeah.
What those like manga robots that it looked like a really bad one of them from the 90s. And I just want to say how disappointing that final set piece was. It lacked scale. Two complete cultures, two complete societies. It looks like the people on your street have fallen out.
Totally.
We've seen like with the final duologue with Namora and Namor at the end. Was it those two?
Yeah.
That he's calculated, he's fucking clever, but yet he gets provoked. Maybe there was further machination involved. This is a film of subtlety, and that was too on the nose. It just went back to MCU set piece. The supposed end of phase 4. I thought this was going to have the final 40 minutes of Endgame or the final hour of Return of the King. Something that had spectacle enough to close it off. But what we actually had was something more akin to the end of the first Deadpool film.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Totally. Yeah, I was likewise very underwhelmed by that final set piece. 5 prominent Wakandans on this ship. I know. I just felt it was not very imaginative. It like you
Not
said, it
at
lacked
all.
scale.
Yeah. Oh, and do you know the agent, the female agent? I knew I recognized her from looking it up previously.
Help me. Where was she from?
She isn't an actress per se. She's a voice actress, and she does Poison Ivy in the Harlequin animated series.
Oh.
I think her name's I think is it Faye Bell or something Bell. She's one of the most prominent voice actors. Fuck, who did she do? She did something in the What If series as well, but I can't for the
Really?
can't for the life of me. I will say off the top of my head, guessing she was Black Widow. Lake Bell. Yeah, Black Widow. Yeah, Lake Bell's her name.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
We've talked enough about this, frankly. I don't know how you feel. Are you sick of hearing my voice yet, Tara?
Never. But as far as the movie goes, of course, I think we're done.
Yeah, I think we're done as well. I think we're done and double done, to be honest with you. To sum it up, you either recommend or you either say to somebody, this film's worth watching or not watching. You can't 7 out of 10 watch something. Yeah, I'd recommend it for that first 15 minutes.
Absolutely recommend. Yeah. Wasn't expecting to feel this strongly positive about it.
I definitely would. I don't even feel like it felt as long as the runtime. I actually felt it. To me, it felt a little shorter, which tells me I had a good time, notwithstanding some of the problems I had with it. But yeah, I would absolutely recommend it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a good film. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for listening to the end of this podcast. If you're on YouTube, thanks for sticking around. Remember to like, share, subscribe, follow. Even if you want to give us a thumbs down and say that I'm just like a bit of a prick, that's fine. You can do that on YouTube. It all counts. So thankfully, we welcome.
Clicks.
So, Tara, do you want to say goodbye to the people?
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for coming with us. And please, like Matt said, like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Follow us to the end.
Indeed.
Ah, oh, I like
Tim?
that. Yeah, absolutely. It's great talking to you guys about this and looking forward to the next one.
Excellent. So I again would like to, if you're still listening to us, I'd like to thank you for holding on, especially if you live in Belgium. And I am Matt. I am the co-host. Please join us again next week for more frivolity and enthusiasm. Like, share, follow, subscribe. And that only leaves me one thing to say. We have been, and this is the end.